Welcome everyone to our day 43 phone call, our Zoom call with Governor Spencer Cox and his executive team as we prepare for the final days of the legislative session, and more importantly, prepare for the interim. I'm Cameron Diehl, the Executive Director of the Utah League of Cities and Towns, and before I introduce League President Mike Caldwell to you, I have a couple of one housekeeping item, and also I'll make a few other introductions. On the housekeeping side, recognize that there are still plenty of bills moving over the final few days of the session, so watch for action alerts, particularly around potentially SB 204, the permitting bill, but keep an eye peeled to your emails and text messages as we may ask for your help here down the stretch. With that being said, I now want to introduce most of the members of the executive branch who are joining us today, and then I'll introduce Mayor Caldwell. So first, let me start with Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor and former State Senator Henderson, for joining us. She is joined by her Chief of Staff, Jen Robinson. So Jen, thank you for joining us. We're also joined by the Chief of Staff to Governor Cox, John Pierpont, and the Communications Director, Jennifer Napier-Pierce. And we are joined by Senior Advisor / Kid from Farron, Mike Maurer, who is a recognizable face for local government across the state. With that, Mayor Caldwell, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce the governor. So Ogden Mayor Mike Caldwell, the pride of O-Town and sporting his Weaver State look for the #2 team in the land, and League President, take it away.
Thanks, Cam. I appreciate that. And to the governor and lieutenant governor, thank you for taking time. I mean, I know how crazy the last week of the session is, and it means a lot to us that you'd be willing to bring your group together and answer some questions and have some dialogue with us. It's truly exceptional. And as I introduce our new governor, just want to say it's amazing that you're the first mayor turned governor since 1948. And as Cam always says, once a mayor, always a mayor. So I'll call you governor, but in less polite circumstances, I may call you mayor down the road, because we all have a collective shared experience with that. So thank you. And I want to thank you personally for the weekly kitchen cabinet calls we've had between your senior staff, the Utah League of Cities and Towns, UAC, and the Wasatch Front Regional Council. It's been really helpful for all of us. Your office has been really open and willing to engage and willing to have dialogue, and that means a ton to us. Thank you very much for coming out of the gates with that kind of an open approach and a willingness to talk and to have conversations. We're really optimistic about what's happening, in spite of this being a really difficult legislative session for everybody, on every reason, on every front. So thank you very much for that. And I was told, a little bird told me that you might have something you would like to begin with. So I will turn the floor over to you, Governor.
Well, Mayor, thank you so much. Cameron, thank you. And to all the mayors and city council members who are out there who have joined us today, thank you. I apologize for being a little bit backlit. I am at my office at the mansion, and that's just how this thing works with Zoom. So I hope you can see me okay. I hope you can hear me okay. But we are really excited to be able to spend a little bit of time with you today. I'm grateful for the hard work that has been happening with the League during this legislative session. As Mayor Caldwell mentioned, it has been a difficult session. I know that the League at times have felt that they've been a little bit under fire by the legislature. And let me just say, I share your pain, or I feel your pain. I think the only group that has maybe been under more attack than the League is the executive branch. And so we're working really hard to parry and fend off every move that we can. And I know you have too, and you've been very successful in that thus far. Again, I know lots can happen over the last 3 days, but I've been very impressed with your work there, and grateful that we've been able to engage together on some of those hot button issues. I'm just so grateful for everyone. The past year has been incredibly difficult. In fact, it was really a year ago right now that things started to get crazy with the pandemic and everything everything started to change for us. It's almost impossible to believe how far we've come and how much we've accomplished. You may have seen today, our unemployment numbers are 3.1%. No one would have believed that in April of last year, that by March of the next year, Utah would be at 3.1%, almost back to our historic lows where we were just before the pandemic of about 2.5%. Just remarkable. That talks about the resiliency of Utah, the resiliency of our economy, and the way that we have managed this pandemic. We have been bottom 5 fewest restrictions of any state in the country, and top 5 when it comes to mortality rates. So if in that perfect balance of a good economy and low deaths, Utah stands ahead of every other state. The last thing I just want to say is how important that all of you are. As you know, rural Utah is very important to me. I'm excited that we announced today that we're moving more jobs, state jobs, to rural Utah, including dozens of jobs now in Manti, Logan, and Price, on top of the announcement we made in January of 20 similar jobs in Roosevelt and Richfield. So we're moving again, as I promised. Jobs are moving out to rural Utah. We'll have even more announcements coming up. The last thing I want to say is this: when I was picking my cabinet and trying to find the best people, I just believe that local government is an incredible proving ground for public service. And so, as you know, again, I come from local government, as was already mentioned. So do many on my team. Karen Peterson was a Clinton City Council member. Mike Maurer worked for Provo City. As you know, I stole John Pike, the mayor of St. George, and Jenny Reese, the mayor of Cedar Hills, as well as Craig Butters, who was the executive in Cache County. So, and many others. But that just, I think, shows our commitment to local government and our gratitude for the great work of the league. So with that, Cam, we'll turn it back to you or Mayor Caldwell, and I know we have some time to answer a few questions.
Mayor Caldwell, take it away. Let me unmute you. Or you go ahead and unmute yourself, Mayor Caldwell, and then take it away.
We did have a few that were sent in, so I'll just go ahead and read through those and give you an opportunity to answer and address those. So thank you again for being here and for what you've done. First up, we have one of the topics we've had and we've debated for the last number of weeks about is state versus local legislative tension, and we'd love to get your thoughts on that. We've had a lot of tension with some legislators about local authority, particularly around land use. How can the state and local government leaders better work together? And would love your thoughts on that.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. And again, this is the tension between the executive and legislative branch. We certainly understand that and are figuring out our own ways to try to work through that. Obviously, I believe more than anything that proximity is what helps us. And proximity has been difficult, getting proximate with people during this pandemic, but making sure that we have that constant contact year round. And I know many of you are good at that. It's probably been harder this year than other times. But helping them understand what you're doing and why it's so important. Now, around land use, I think we have to understand at the heart of this that there's just a different perspective, and this is really important, I think, for all of us to understand. The legislature has to look at problems mainly from a statewide perspective. When we talk about local government, of course, we're just interested in our little corner of the state and what's happening there. And there are some problems that extend across borders and that we have a very different incentive structure. And one of those is land use. Normally, I think most times nobody cares and we're all fine and we can all go and do our other thing. But I don't think that your members, and I don't think most Utahns and even some legislators truly understand the crisis that we're facing right now with affordable housing. This isn't just a nice thing that we need to work on, which is what it's been for the past 20 years. I mean, we talked about it, whatever. It is a crisis, and outside of the pandemic, it might be the biggest crisis we're facing as a state. And you will never feel that as a mayor or city council member. I mean, you'll get a little bit of pressure on that, but because it's so much broader, right? It can always be somebody else's problem. This is kind of the tragedy of the commons for those political scientists out there a little bit. But as state leaders and talking to the speaker and the president, they see this too. How dire this is. I mean, look, we have less than 2,000 homes for sale in the state right now. Normally this time of year, we would have 20 to 30,000. And this is an existential crisis, and it's not just people moving into the state, although that's a big part of it. It's that we still are the youngest state in the nation, and we want a place to have our kids live and be raised. And so I think that's why there's this different pressure that they feel versus what maybe your members feel. And so that's where, and I've been so impressed with your willing to come to the table to work collaboratively on these issues to really help find solutions. Some cities have been really good at this. I have to admit, some have been great from the beginning, always looking for ways to try to get more affordable housing. And quite frankly, some haven't been. Some don't care, and some have just said, "Not our problem, and we're not going to deal with this." And that's, I think, where there's definitely been some tension. And so I do think that this is something that we can get past. I think it's something that we can get past very quickly and get back to a better balance than what we've seen from the legislature this year.
Thank you for that, Governor. I appreciate that answer. Up next, we have a COVID-19 question. With things rapidly changing about COVID-19, what will be the direction for very small and remote areas? In San Juan County, we have dramatically dropped in cases and we have a very high vaccination rate. Within the county, we have broken things down to zip code because we are such a large area with the population spread out into many different communities. Will local leaders be able to have input into the separate communities rather than the county as a whole?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't want to punt on this one at all. There are discussions. There's a bill right now about kind of the end game and what that looks like as we come out of this COVID crisis, and that's all being negotiated right now. There's a lot of work that's going into that. I do think it's important to note that that we're going to be fighting about a whole bunch of things that really don't matter, because over the next few weeks, our vaccinations are going to explode, and everybody that's going to want a vaccine will be able to have a vaccine. And we hope, right now, it looks so great that our numbers will continue to go down immensely. And there, unfortunately, there's a lot of people, including legislators who have not been paying attention. They've been watching too much, I don't know, CNN or Fox News or whatever, and they hear these stories about California and lockdowns and all of these things, and don't realize that Utah is still top 10 for fewest restrictions. And that's changing too. Most of those small counties, and as of tomorrow, big counties are going to be in moderate on the transmission index. And in moderate right now, that removes just about every restriction there is. And so the ability for people to come together in large groups, as long as they have masks on, that actually happens in moderate. And we expect, again, some of our biggest counties, most of our counties will be in moderate this week, and many others in just the next week or so. Some are in low, which means that there's virtually no restrictions, again, other than masks to protect our most vulnerable, while we're still getting these vaccines out as quickly as possible. And so, yeah, all of those restrictions are going away, and they're going away fairly soon. And that's a really good thing. Again, we still want to protect people. We need to get vaccines out. We're doing an incredible job with vaccines. We went from 39th in the nation to top 5 in the nation in vaccines administered. Now, when you see those vaccine numbers that say that Utah is the worst in the nation because we have the lowest total percent of population vaccinated, that has absolutely nothing to do with us. It only has to do with the way our population is made up. We have lots of kids, and kids can't get vaccinated, so we will always be the worst in that. They don't send us vaccine for our kids. It's just based on adult population. So I hate that they publish those numbers, because they should just say percent of adult population instead of percent of total population. But that's where we are. We can only do with the vaccine that we get, and we're doing a tremendous job there. So again, everybody's worried about restrictions, and those are all going away as we get on the other side of this. But Lieutenant Governor Henderson has been working really hard on this issue, and I want to make sure she has some time to add to the conversation.
Well, of course, we've been working with the legislature. Rich Saunders, our director of the Department of Health, has been really incredible to make sure that the policies that do come from the legislature aren't going to set us back. We are really hopeful that we can end this really soon, and that we end it in a way that makes sense and is meaningful, and isn't going to result in another spike and more restrictions. But I'm so impressed as I've stepped into this role in the last 2 months. I had no idea. And I think most people, especially the legislature, they have no idea what has actually gone into the COVID response. We have just incredible people who've been working nonstop for the past year, and who when they do sleep at night, they dream about it. It's been a nonstop effort, and we're really lucky as a state to be in the position that we're in. We're in a really, really good position, I'm just going to put a plug in for our new governor. His leadership has been amazing. At night and day a difference as far as engaging others and making sure that all of the voices are heard, and even, understanding that the legislature, they want to bear some of this burden, they're going to bear some of this burden, and they're going to have to live with the consequences of it as well, which is what the people in the health department and the executive branch and others who've been working on this for the past year have been doing. So I for one am grateful, and want to make sure that everybody understands that the governor's leadership has been absolutely a game changer this year, and that's not to take anything away from his predecessor, but it's been astonishing in all of the good ways to see. So we appreciate your support, your feedback. It's really important for us to hear what's going on, especially as we work with the local health departments to get the vaccines delivered, to make sure that we're responding to the needs of local communities. We don't know what we don't know, so we really rely on you to make sure that we know what we need to know. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. And being the president, I get to take just a quick second of executive privilege and say I am so grateful for the leadership in this state. I have a daughter that runs for the University of San Francisco, and it is a hot mess in California. You've all done a phenomenal job of trying to thread the needle and balance it when we didn't have all the information and haven't had all the information, and the way our economy is functioning and the way the messaging has come consistently and stable from the leadership of the state. We're all blessed to have you all at the helm, and I just want to give my personal thank you for that. And I get to do that as president. I guess all the other panelists can't say that, but I want you to know personally for me how much I appreciate that and how reassuring that has been for all of us in local positions and trying to communicate with our constituents and give them a sense of stability and an idea of where we're going. You've all been phenomenal at that. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
So with that point of personal privilege, I'll move on to the next one, which is an economic development and planning question. In light of the changes to GOED and GOPD, how do you see state and local governments working together on economic development and planning, both in urban and rural Utah?
Well, I'm glad whoever asked this question sent it in, because it's really at the crux of the changes. The whole idea behind these changes to GOED and GOMB to GOPB, adding that planning function, was really to help to get additional resources and more collaboration with local governments. It's one of the things that I saw as I visited all 248 cities and towns across Utah during the campaign. Was I felt that we had so many places, and again, not just in rural Utah, but in urban Utah, suburban Utah, on those shoulders that are just exploding. As I spent time, in Box Elder County and Weber County, as that population center is kind of exploding outward. We had communities where 8 employees, 1 public works person, and 2,500 homes under some sort of process, and we needed additional resources. And so by having a planning function back in GOMB, I think that's going to be really helpful. And again, on the economic development side as well, taking a much more holistic approach to economic development, focusing less on just incentivizing jobs on the Wasatch Front, which has kind of been our approach over the past 20 years. Not a bad approach, by the way. It's been a very successful approach. It's been amazing. In fact, it's been so successful that now we have to start thinking about other things. We do need those jobs, but when you have above full employment, it's harder for these jobs to be filled. We have to start looking again at the other issues that come along with that and making sure that we're being smarter about the incentives that we're giving out, and then focusing more of those in rural areas and on those economies that are not doing as well as the Wasatch Front. And so those are the changes we're making specifically for that. So that question, that's the answer to the question, is these changes were made specifically so we could improve that collaboration.
Great, thank you very much. Up next is one near and dear to my heart, and I guess I would ask, what do you think about the police bills that the legislature considered this session? We had our Love, Listen, and Lead group and a bunch of others. I know people with robust police departments in their areas were really worried about some of the dialogue and what we'd seen and heard on national media and everything else. So just love to take your temperature on how you feel the police bills came out and get an idea of where you think that's going to go in the future.
Yeah, well, and I'd love to have the Lieutenant Governor weigh in on this one as well. But I've been really pleased with, obviously, there are some bills we love, some bills we don't like as much. But overall, broadly supportive of what is happening here. And the best part of this, again, is we've taken this false choice and false dichotomy that you either have to care about police or you have to care about our multicultural or minority communities. The truth is that's a false choice, and we've proven that. Law enforcement has come to work with our multicultural and our minority communities to find real solutions to help and to get them more resources, which I think is so important. We've been asking our police departments to do things that they were never trained to do, and that's where we're finding real common ground and real solutions. And so I'm very optimistic. I think it's a real win-win. Lieutenant Governor, again, who's been negotiating with the legislature on so many of these issues, any additional thoughts there?
Well, I'll just say, I mean, there were, I think, over 70 bills dealing with law enforcement this session. I haven't in the last day or two counted it all up to see which ones are dead and which ones are looking like they'll move forward. But I will say that our law enforcement has been, they could have taken the approach of being very defensive and trying to just oppose everything. But that is not what I have seen. I have seen them coming to the table, being willing to talk about painful things, being willing to talk about things that maybe make them uncomfortable, and see things that might be hard for some of them to actually see about themselves and about their departments. And they've been so good at that. And of course, not everybody gets what they want, but I've been impressed, as the governor mentioned, that there's been this discussion and there's this willingness to make things better. And it's not an us versus them. It's very much a how can we improve? What can we do better moving forward? And I think we'll get some of that done this session. And I think hopefully some of the really bad ones that could be very destructive and dangerous are not going to pass.
Thank you for that. And we appreciate your work and support with that. Having seen up close and personal how difficult that job is, that support is seen and heard and felt, and it really matters. So thank you all very much. I think we have time for one more question. We had you till 1:30. And so another near and dear one to my heart, and this wasn't my question. It was an unidentified questioner. What tools and resources can the state of Utah provide to develop regional trails in urban areas such as the Bonneville shoreline? And being a lifelong ski bum and bike geek, self-identified ski bum and bike geek, those things are really important. And we saw that over the course of the summer and COVID. All of our state parks, all of our outdoor areas, that quality of life was absolutely amazing for people that lived in Utah. And it was a big attractor in terms of economic development and people wanting to come and be in an area where they could have access to that type of stuff. So if you have any thoughts on what tools and resources the state can provide to help with some of that and to help expand that, I think that's something everybody would be interested in.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So if you like trails and you like outdoor recreation, this is going to be a very good session for you. As most of you know, a few years ago, I worked very closely with Speaker of the now Speaker of the House, Brad Wilson. He was not the Speaker then, to pass the outdoor recreation grant program that put about $5 million in ongoing funds into trails and improvements, not just in rural Utah, but in urban Utah as well. And in our budget, we included a significant ask of the legislature for money to go to trails and to go to these programs, state parks and other enhancements. And I haven't seen the latest numbers we got in there, but I know it's a big number, and we're really excited about that number that will allow us to work on these trails, on these outdoor recreation opportunities. And you're right, Mayor, we've seen that during COVID. There are some real positives that are coming out of COVID, and I think this is one of those. And if we can use this to springboard us to improve some of these trails here, but by the way, that's economic development. As much as anything else, when we look at these companies that have moved here, we look at this younger entrepreneurial generation and the tech community. When we look at what they care about, like access to trails from work and from home, is really high on their list. And so this is only going to help Utah continue to stay in those top rankings economically. Lieutenant Governor, anything else that we missed there?
No, and I wish I had those budget numbers off the top of my head, but things will be good. We've got a significant amount of money going to our state parks, and we're doing some, well, as far as the outdoor recreation grants, we're going to go ahead and keep those in go ahead. And that'll make probably some of you really happy. But we're making sure that we preserve some of that for the trails and the human powered, I guess, recreation. Make sure that we're preserving that. So I think things will shake out pretty good in the end this session for that.
Well, thank you all, and thank you for that. That's obviously something very personal to me, and that's why we choose to raise our family and live in Utah, and why I think we actually recruit better than anybody else, because we have the most diverse and beautiful and amazing state in certainly the lower 49. Alaska's pretty amazing as well, but I'll leave that to a different editorial. But we really do appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. Like I said in the open, the fact that you take the time to bring your whole executive team together, talk to the league in the last week of the session, I think that's unprecedented, and you need to know how much we appreciate that and how much we felt the cooperation, and you guys are doing a phenomenal job. Thank you all very much. Cam, do you have anything to add?
And we wouldn't do that for everyone. We have to tell a lot of people no this week, but we had to tell you yes, and I'm glad we did. Thank you.
Well, let me wrap up with this. Thank you for the historic investment in infrastructure. Thank you for a budget that reflected the needs of and the requests, frankly, of local government leaders around the state. Thank you for your enhanced focus on collaboration between the state and local governments. And thank you for bringing your respective backgrounds to this office. And I think I think the best is yet to come for Team Utah over the next decade. And on a personal note, you mentioned the outdoor recreation grant. I'm the vice chair of that advisory committee, and it's the best committee assignment I have as league director is participating in that effort. And it's one of the many reasons why Utah is the best place in the country. So Lieutenant Governor Henderson and Governor Cox and the rest of your team, thank you for your work this session. And we look forward to continued collaboration in the off season. And go Jazz.
Go Jazz. Thank you.
As